Okay. So I'm recording now. If you have questions, feel free to interrupt me at any time. That's fine. But I'm going to start. I did start the recording. Okay. So talking about the storyboard. So this is something that we always use when we are in a professional setting. If you're creating an animation, you always start with the storyboard. That way you can kind of lay out what you want to occur in the animation, whether it's a narrative or visual, other components. And then you have a blueprint or kind of an outline to work from. And that'll make your workflow go a little bit faster, and you'll be able to kind of plan things out. As we talked about in previous classes, animation takes a lot of work. There's a lot of time and labor that goes into it, and so you can make that process a little bit easier by having a good and so you can plan out how long is something going to take, so you don't run out of time adding the various parts that you add in. So the way that we typically do that with this is with a storyboard, where instead of obviously animating every single frame, we animate kind of the main components of a story, or even just a short. We're making these short 10-second animations, so we're gonna have a couple things happen, and we can use the storyboard just to block out what those things. Um, and so we used to do this in person in class. Well, if we were in person, we would do this. I would print it out and copy and could draw on it, and that's a lot easier to do. We are not in person, obviously, so there's a couple different ways about it. If you have access to a printer and you prefer to do it by hand, you can print it out and draw on it, and then take a photo with your phone or scan it or whatever and upload that. That's perfectly fine. But since we're online, what I'll do is talk about how to do it using conveniently, we've already learned how to use software that we can do design with. And so even though we're talking about animation for this first bit today, I'm going to be using Illustrator to do my storyboard. So I'm just going to do a quick demo of how you can set it up and what kind of information goes in. So it may be different depending on what you're working on, but you should get a sense of like the basic breakdown. So this is just one workflow. Again, if you prefer, I encourage you to print it out and do it by hand. That's how I would do it if we were in person. But obviously we're not in person. So to get started with the storyboard, if you go to the animation page, which I put in the voice chat, I'll get in there, and I'll paste a link to the actual storyboard as well. You can see there's a link here to the storyboard template, and if you click on that, it's going to open up this PDF, and you can just download this. So there's going to be a download button here, and you can just download it onto your computer. And so this way you'll be able to edit it. And what I'm going to do, you could use Photoshop, you could use Illustrator. There's other programs that you can use as well. I'm going to use Illustrator just because it's a little bit more towards adding shapes and stuff like that than Photoshop. But feel free to use whatever you want. So I'm going to copy this link and I will put it in chat for you guys. And so I'm just going to talk about what goes into a storyboard. We saw a screenshot of this in our slides on animation, so we can go back and here we go. So here's an example of a storyboard. It's a little hard to see because of the color, but you can see that each sort of box in this storyboard has a character who's speaking, and it kind of shows what kind of shot there is, whether it's like a close-up or a medium shot or a long shot, although we don't see any long shots in this particular story. And then you see the dialogue at the bottom. So it shows us kind of like the main parts of the narrative that are going on. And it also tells us a little bit about the expressions that we see. So you can see in the first frame, the character is kind of smiling and they're looking to the left, and we have their dialogue. And then the next frame, we have our second character, right? We're establishing that the two characters are looking at each other, and there's a dialogue for the second character. Third frame, we go back to the first character. We have a similar expression. His head is moved a little bit, so he's reacting to what the second character said, and we have dialogue. And then we have a shot with both of them. And so we have a medium shot where we can see both of their faces and a little bit of their body. And so we're just kind of framing each part of the story so that when we go to animate, we know what we're going to be working on, and you don't have to spend time as we're actually animating thinking about like what should be happening at that moment. So this will help you sort of plan out your animation. At this point, hopefully you've gotten some sense of what you create, whether it's, the prompt is animated emotion. So if you've chosen an emotion that you want to animate, that's great. If you want to take it in a different direction, of course, that's absolutely fine. If you have a different like to animate, that is perfectly fine. You don't in the examples, I'm going to use different techniques and different content, and you don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. I'm just kind of giving sense of two, but as usual, feel free to kind of take it. Okay, so let's actually edit our storyboard. So I'm gonna open up my downloads folder, and I'm gonna if I double click on the storyboard, it's probably gonna open in like a default program, which is probably like on Windows, it's gonna like I think on Mac it might be like the program or something like that. But what I want to do is edit it in another program. So I'm gonna right click and go to Open With, and there's a similar option for Mac as well. And I'm just gonna choose Adobe Illustrator. Of course, I could go over to Illustrator and open it directly from there as well, but that's how I'm gonna open it up. And then I'm gonna edit this, and then eventually I'll save it into my animation with the rest of my animation project. So I'll save a new copy of this PDF that will be in the Adobe Illustrator. That's taking a little while to load, but okay, so there's our storyboard. Um, and there's a lot of different parts to this. You can find plenty of storyboard templates online. So if you want something that's a little bit simpler, we might not really use like dialogue in our animation since it's a very short animation. So you might not need like the but the main thing we're going to focus on is filling in kind of our composition inside the boxes. So the first thing I'm going to do is just lock this bottom layer so that I don't accidentally edit any of the original sort of lines or shapes in here. I could actually edit them. Like if you want to, it did actually take out all of the paths, and I can actually delete them. So if you want to change the storyboard template, you can. But I'm just going to lock this and make it so I can add stuff on top of it, but I'm not going to delete or change the original board. And then I'm just going to make a new layer, and I'm just going to save this. So I'm going to hit Ctrl+S, save. And I'm probably going to save this as an Illustrator file so that I can edit it in the future if I want to make changes. I actually saved over the original PDF. So let's, instead of Control+S, what I'm going to want to do is save as and make a new version of this. So I'll say Control+S, and that's going to bring up my dialog box for the File Explorer. And so I'll just go to my desktop, go into my MMP 100 folder. Here's my animated emotions folder. So we'll see, we'll put this alongside our After Effects files. And I'm going to change this to Adobe Illustrator. So this will be storyboard.ai. So I can make changes and then click and go with the settings. So that looks good. And then eventually when you turn in your animation assignment, which I'll cover in a lesson next week, you can just export, a JPEG or PNG. So let's just go ahead. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but I'm just going to edit a couple things just to give us what you might want to do. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit and grab my text tool and put in the title of my animation up here. And so this is animated emotion Roberts. And I'm just going to go with the default text there. I don't really need. So I'm going to have animated emotions here. I, of course, have already started my animation because I've been doing some lessons. We've done a couple demos with it. You guys may have already started your as well, and that's fine. If you want to kind of work backwards and put into the storyboard what you've created, that's totally perfect. You don't have to start with a. I haven't really done a whole lot. I have some like bouncing circles, and that's pretty much it. But I'll just kind of add a few things in here. So my first thing that happens actually is like I fade in from black. And so, if you have a fade in, that you might not consider that like an essential trait, but you could put it in there. So I could just put some text down here, a back, as my first frame here, some instructions, and then I've got a bunch of circles. I actually haven't really chosen an emotion that I'm working with, so let's think of an emotion that we can. Random emotion generator. All right, let's see what we get. Interest doesn't really strike me as try another one. Right. Okay, fright is a good. That's an emotion that we all are familiar with. So I'll put a little text here and call this fright. Okay. And now I have to see if I can actually make something that looks like that, but we will see. We can use our out. And so if I want to animate fright, maybe I'll start, I have these like little bouncing circles. So maybe I'll start with them kind of like just bouncing and being happy, and then something will happen and then they'll get scared and run. So I want some circles in here. So I'm gonna get my shape and I'm just gonna put a circle here, and I'll hold shift to make it an even circle so it has the same width and height. And it doesn't have to be like beautiful visually. It just has to communicate what's going on. So I'm not even gonna bother changing the fill or the stroke. I'm just gonna make a few copies of it. And I think I had 6 little circles in my demo. So I'm just gonna make 6 circles here. And I'm just gonna say, so we've got some circles and just gonna put in, so we're starting with some happy circle. Okay. And so in the next scene, I'm gonna show the circles bouncing. So I'm just gonna grab this whole section of circles. So I'm just using the selection tool, select all of them, and I'm holding Alt to duplicate them and just move here. And now I'm just gonna move them up and down just to give the sense that they're bouncing. Again, this isn't supposed to be the Mona Lisa. It's just giving us a sense of what's going on in our animation. So then I'll take my type tool again, say circles are happy and bounce. Okay, so we're kind of establishing these circles that right now are in the state of happiness, and they're about to be confronted by something scary. I'm not really sure what that is right now. Maybe it can just be like a really big circle. So maybe we can add that over here. And we can always change this later. So let's show we've got this really big circle. We could even show it coming from off of frame. So I'll just put in here, big circle. Okay. So we're gonna make a little cut there. And so now we've only got 3 frames left. Let's see if we can finish everything here. And so then let's grab our little guys again. So I'm gonna select all of those and hold Alt and drag them down here. And now I'm gonna bunch them together so they look a little scared. So I'm gonna move them all this. Okay. And I'll say the circles be the big circle approach. And now I have 2 more frames. Of course, you can use more frames. You can make copies of the storyboard and make as many pages as you need to tell your story. But most of our stories should be pretty simple. So circles see the big circle approach, and let's say my circle turns into Pac-Man and it's gonna eat them. Make a new big circle, uh, and I will, let's see, I'm gonna need a triangle. So I'll make a little polygon and get 3 sides, and then get my selection tool again, and let's rotate this around and stick it here. And then I'm going to use my shape builder and, oh wait, I have to select my shapes first. I'm going to grab these 2 shapes, get my shape builder, click on the Pac-Man part, go back to my regular tool. Hopefully I did this right. Nope. Okay, I did it. Sweet. Okay, so I'm going to delete these. So now, turns out that this big circle is Pac-Man. So I'll say the big circle is Pac-Man. And then all the little circles are going to run away. So I need the circles. I'm going to grab them. And this time I'm just going to copy and then go over here and paste. So just Control C. I'm going to zoom out for a second. Okay. And let's make them all jumping over each other to get. Okay. So this is sort of a goofy little story, but that gives you a sense of how we can kind of block out our story and how that helps us kind of plan what's going to happen in the animation. I'll just say the circles run okay. Okay. So again, you don't have to use Illustrator for this, but since it's already a digital file, it is a little bit easier to kind of get it in there and just use shapes. Again, it doesn't have to be beautiful. It just has to communicate what's going to happen in the story. So I think this is a good start. And of course, it's an Illustrator file, so I can always come back and edit this. Of course, if you prefer, you can use Photoshop. You could also just print it out and draw on it and take a photo and upload it. That's perfectly fine as well. But now I have this storyboard that I can work with. I'm going to go ahead and export a JPEG. I go to export as, and so that way I don't have to open Illustrator if I want to look at this. So I'm just going to and click export, and this all seems fine. I'm going to hit OK. So then now, if I go back to my File Explorer and go to the desktop, go to MMP 100, and go to my Emotions folder, there's my storyboard.jpg. So I can open this up and I can see the storyboard. Oh, I saved it without the artboard, which is why I cut out those edges. So that's not a big deal. We can still see the main content, but next time I save it, I'll probably make sure to save it. So there we go. We have our storyboard. Ethan asked, is the storyboard required for a grade? Yes, this is part of the grade. If you look at the assignment on Blackboard, you'll see the requirements. That kind of gives me the sense that you think the storyboard is not going to be useful to create your animation. And I will say, it might seem like busy work, but it is actually how people work in the real world. It is actually literally how professionals make animation. Probably the most important part, because that's where you map out everything that's going into the animation. Much more significant to explaining what you're going for and planning and building things out than the actual literal animation that so I don't know, it's probably worth 5 or 10 points in the Blackboard. So you can take that for what it is, but it is something that if you plan to work in a creative field or work on animation in the future, that's something that people will expect be for. Anyway, so we're gonna do another quick demo. I'm gonna stop this video here.